welcome back. Today I'm going to take you through building this monster, this 5-inch quad. So this is pretty much a premium top-end freestyle quad. There's going to be different ways you can build a quad. They're all pretty much the same, so you can use the same tips and tricks in this video to build anything from around about £100 upwards. This is pretty much a premium, but in the description I'll put all the parts that I've used so you can look them up and take a choice. Anyway, without ado, let's head over to the bench and let's see how I made this. So okay, it's build time. So what have we got here? Well, this has really got some stars of the show, and it's going to be pretty much a full fat build. Now, what have we got? Well, okay, let's start with the simple stuff. R9. Now, I use R9. Yes, I would love to be using other types of long range transmitter, but the R9 works for me. It's a system that I've got, but you could put your own receiver in if you choose to do a similar build. Then, oh, look at Xing motors. Now this will be my third Xing build, and just to give you some examples, there's my Tyro, fully modified. Those motors are superb, and of course one of the stars of my show is my Airline Pirate long range, which has got these beefy little beauties on, and I really do rate the Xing motors. So yeah, coming back to the build anyway, let's have a look at these. Oh, just look at that. Like, the quality in these Xing motors is unsurpassed. So yeah, to me, really excited about this build. Another star of the show, obviously we are going full fat air unit. So we're not doing analog, we are going DJI, because I want this to be a proper full-on build. The other thing we've got, Mamba stack. Oh, look at this beauty. Now, this is an F7. Pulling out the various bits. So look at that. And I'm going to really look forward to sticking that beauty in. Then we're coming on to the frame. The frame I'm going to be using, it's actually a clone. It's next to a 20HV frame. Now, I've used these on previous builds, and I really like the frame. They're tough, they're robust, they're cheap. What can you say? We'll unbox that in a little while. And of course, my standard props, a nice green set. I've got plenty of these. I'll buy these by the bucket load, because one of the things, if you're getting into FPV, one of the things you will go through by the bucket load will be propellers. And then, yeah, a load of 3D printed parts. Now, giving no clues as to what this is going to be called. Look at that. Already done the work. I've modified a few parts. They're already 3D printed. I might have to stop the video and truck up and redo some parts. If you watched my previous video, you'll have seen me create the XT60 connection, and then a few other bits I've got. Now, I've got a spare Rubicon. I sometimes do put 2 of these on a build, and so there's a spare one there to go with it, and I've got my buzzer. And if we look at the design of the setup I've got, the buzzer is going to fit in there, so we'll start with that. So first thing I'm going to do is we'll get on and unpack the frame, because that's where we're going to start. Okay, so first things first, let's start with unboxing the frame, see what components we've got, see what we've got to do to put it together. Now, one of the nice things with buying this brand of frame is the fact you also get one of these. Now, these work perfectly with the GoPro Hero Sessions. So yeah, one of the reasons I buy this, I was hoping to get a green one. They do chuck a random colour in, but I didn't get a green one, but never mind, that works great. So let's get opening. So what have we got here? Yeah, put that to one side. So tie wraps, they'll work. Not amazing, but they'll work. Tie wraps? Did I just call those tie wraps? Battery straps. Then we come on to the tie wraps. landing feet. Now, I won't be using them in this build, but the landing feet are something that I rip off on a regular basis on other drones of mine, so that'll be good. A set of standoffs, a set of screws, and our frames. So yeah, let's just open up our frame. So let's just pull this out. So just a quick check of the components. We're expecting to have 4 arms, which we've got, 2 side mounts for the camera, which we've got, a bottom plate, a top plate, and a cruciform to hold it all together. So that's what I'm expecting to have. So they're not chamfered edge components, but they are nice and cleanly cut. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do in this build is I'm actually going to assemble the arms. Now, what I'm going to do with the arms is I'm going to add the feet. Now, hopefully, we'll check this out in a moment, but hopefully that should meet that. Now, if you watched an earlier video of mine, you'd see a way of copying your carbon fibre parts into your CAD program so that you can make bits like this. And I'll put a card somewhere up here to do that. So let's look at assembling, first of all, the arms. Okay, so I've grabbed my carbon fibre parts now, and I've grabbed my 3D printed parts, and we're just going to look at getting these pushed together. Now, I have made these a fairly tight fit, so I'm going to toddle off and I'm going to get these things pressed in and on. Look at that, fits perfectly. I'm going to add the motors, and I'm going to add some heat shrink down the motor wires to make this all work. So come back, and by the magic of editing, we should have those together. So by the magic of editing, I've now clipped on all my landing feet and what will be the motor protectors in this particular instance. And so the next thing that I'm going to do, we're going to take motors. Now, something just to remind you of when you're putting on anything like this, they need to be handed. So you've got a left hand and a right hand because they'll be paired coming in. So I'm going to check that before I actually complete the build. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some motors out and I'm going to get them attached to the arms. Now, they do come with a set of screws, but I know full well that those sets of screws probably won't go the distance that I need them to go in this instance. So I've got some of the screws, so I'm going to set up a motor ready, and I'll take you to the next stage. Okay, so I've got 3 out of the 4 arms prepared with the motor on, and what I've been doing is I've just clipped on the foot, screwed on the motor and attached some heat shrink. So if I just take you through the process. Now, you do get in the box with the motor, you do get some screws, but because I've made these custom fitted feet, they won't work. So they're going to go into a box, and I save these things because you can never be without. Now, if we just take a look in the pack, you get your nut, and you also get some what look like stainless steel motor screws. Now, because I've made these foot, as I've explained, I've had to get some specially sized ones, and I've done that with another frame prior to actually starting this build. What we're going to do, take your motor out, pop your motor on. Now, always ensure with your frame screws, with your motor screws, should I say, not your frame screws, with your motor screws, I'm going to use a little bit of blue just on the thread, pop it through, and then we're just going to anchor. Now, we don't need to over tension it, we're only going to do pinch tight. Now look, I don't know whether you can see in there, that thread is barely coming out the top, barely coming out the top of that motor. Now, the nice thing with these Xing is you've got good clearance between the thread of the screw and the windings, so there's no real risk of colliding with your windings and creating a short. But anyway, not even pinch tight at this stage. Just get a bit of blue thread on your screws, and once you feel any kind of resistance, if I can actually line it up in this instance, you might find that they are a little bit of a pig, and you have to sometimes undo one that you've previously done just to give a little bit of slack for the motor that you're creating. There we go, pinch now, and once again we don't need to go tight. And here we go with another one. Again, as a little tip for you when you're building, an old bit of cardboard, don't try and squeeze. I use this stuff. Don't try and squeeze it onto your thread. it'll just go all over the place. I've done here an old little bit of cardboard, and quite simply just drag your thread through the thread blue, get it all over the end, find the thread that you're going in, do it. And once you've attached all of your threads, and they're just literally pinch tight, now I'm just going to go back to my first one, and you see that's loose again. Pinch it, opposite, find the thread, pinch it, pinch it, pinch it. You'll see I'm applying very little force. Let that thread lock work and do what it needs to do. We'll come back to these before we go fly, and we'll just retension them. They don't have to be super tight. We don't want them to be super tight. You don't want to strip the threads. You don't want to break anything. So for argument's sake now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to straighten the wires down the arm and make those nice and tidy. And then what I'm going to do is, once I've got them fairly straight, I'm going to take a piece of heat shrink, thread my wires through in the first place, and this is where I get khaki handed and it all goes to pieces. So get our cables laid as we want them. If you do it now, it makes it a lot easier to get it straight and on and done. Now you see it's quite a snug fit, this particular one. Won't hurt. I just like to do it rather than wrapping tape round arms. This particular variety allows me to really get a good firm fit tight. So we're just going to offer it up to the end of the foot, and then I'm going to get a heat gun and just play the heat gun over the top to start with. Don't linger, especially with 3D printed parts. You linger, you're going to find you've got melted 3D prints. So just scoot over it as much as you need to, just to start that heat shrink from coming into play. Let's go down the back. That's getting a bit warm on the old fingers. And there we have it. A nice and tidy 3D printed part. So there we have 1, 2, 3, 4 arms already done and ready to go. So let's move on to assembling the arms onto the frame. Right, so coming onto our frame now. So we've got our arms constructed as we want them to be. They're nicely tied down with a bit of shrink wrap. Shrink wrap? Yeah, heat shrink. That's the word I'm looking for. And looking really quite awesome. So let's move on to the frame, because that is the next bit. So I'm going to take the bottom plate, and I'm going to take the cruciform that attaches to the bottom. All that's left in the frame bag now is 2 sides for the camera, which I'm not going to be using because I've 3D printed a part for this job. We've got the top now. For this to be done, I'm going to have to make some modifications to this just so as it fits the DJI Air Unit aerials realistically, but I'll show you what I do there. And I don't know if I've said already, but if I haven't said already, I'm looking to get these put up onto Thingiverse, so as they are 3D printable parts. So if you've got a 3D printer and want to make this exact same build, you can do. And there's little measuring points and stuff that go with it to enable you to just check you've done any dimensional changes to frames. Yeah, I'll stick it on a link below, I think would be the word to look for. Right, move on to the frame. So what we've got, right, so we've got our base plate. We've got a cruciform that locks it in underneath. What I've also done briefly off camera is I have put a slight radius on this side, and the reason for that is that when these arms lock in, which they will do under there, this wire comes up over that, and I just don't want it over time to score the cable or damage the cable. So I've just taken a little bit off with a diamond file. I happen to have one of those. If you haven't, pence on eBay or Banggood or AliExpress or wherever you get your bits from. Okay, so let's open up the packet and have a look at the nuts and bolts that they've included, because I'm going to have to swap some out because I have got a crash plate that I've built for the front of this as well. Do you know what? I'm just going to pull the top off. God, fiddling with that. Right, oh, hello, we've got some nice long screws. Now I'm making the assumption that the long screws are what are going to go through and lock our arms in, because they are big enough to go through what looks like 5mm arms, a 3mm base plate, and a 1.5mm crucifix plate. So, and also I'm assuming that I shall be using the locking nuts as well. So let's just take, in this instance, the first arm, orientate it. Let's just check. Yep. Orientate it to how it's going to be. Try not to have a thicky twin moment when I'm assembling it. And let's just drop. So that's going to go on there somehow. So now I am going to do bolt down to minimize the overall headspace of these things. Oh, and make it tidy. So bear with me a second whilst I just muddle my way through this. You need 4 hands. Always do need 4 hands. Humans sadly don't always come with 4 hands, and therefore you have to make do. Okay. Nope. That way. Okay, right, so probably a little bit of muddling around off camera, and that gives us our first item into place. Now, it does take a little bit of messing around, I think would be the best way to describe it. So we're going to loosely attach, in this instance, the locking nut at the bottom. Pinch tight, because you probably have to undo these umpteen times. So next leg, arm leg, yeah. Pop that in there. Once again, line the plate up, line the holes up, top down. That doesn't look right. Now what's going to happen is these arms are actually going to meet in the middle of the frame. And they kind of lock in and pinch in, so they actually assemble perfectly together. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment whilst I just try and get this right. Oh. That's it. Pull it over the top. There we go. We're in. We're on. But are we cooking on gas yet? Right. Let's put another one in there. And it's a real faff. It is, because you're trying to mangle together 3 plates. That's not the right size. Let's try it. That's not the right size either. Here we go. And there we are. That's it. Right, we stand a fighting chance of actually getting that into place. And now the next one. Now you can see it's already coming together, even though it's being a complete swine to do. So I'm going to carry on with this and come back to you once I've put all the legs in place and done what I need to do. So we've now assembled the arms onto the frames. It's not tightened up, and just having a little bit of a brain moment when I first started to assemble it, we have to leave these 4 pins clear. Simply fact that that'll be the flight controller positions, and we've got other screws that will action the flight controller. So I'm just going to tighten these up now. I'm simply going to grip the back with a pair of pliers, and we're just going to tighten those up. Now, unlike the motor screws, give these a good old pinch up. Don't get stripping anything, but you know, don't be shy to give them make sure they're nice and tight, because these have got they're not tightening into weak thin aluminium. These are tightening into quite heavy duty nylock nuts, so it's a good situation there too. I'm actually spinning the I might need to grind the top down of my driver, because I Just strip that, applying a little bit too much force. And I'm going to go around and tighten some of these. Also, don't forget, you're going to be building your stack off the top of these, so you kind of get one shot to tighten them down. If they're not tightened down to start with, then you're going to be building your flight controller on top of this puppy. So you don't want to be forgetting to tighten something down, otherwise you're going to have to deconstruct. Now, the way that this is built is quite involved, and there's quite a bit of threading and wrapping and doing bits and bobs, so it really does make for a bad job if you don't do that in the first instance. So let's just get this finished and we can talk about some other bits. So give me it, that's it. That's it. We're all in. We're all done. So there's our frame. It's facing front. I know it's facing front because that's where the various gubbins go for the camera. So it's actually starting to already look like a quadcopter, even though we haven't got the electronics in yet and the top plate and all the other things in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the flight controller and we're going to start positioning the flight controller. Now there's a lot of wiring that has to go into this, so I'm going to be getting the flight controller and a few other bits and gubbins just to position them and find out how they're going to wire in. So join me in a minute when I've got those bits ready. Now we've got the frame together, we've tightened up all the brackets, we've established where the mounts are going to go. I've got the flight stack out. It's going to be orientated. Now, it's going to be orientated in that direction, and the reason for that is I'm actually running the cables backwards. Now, there's a lot of people that will say the shorter your cable, the better. But in this build, I want the cable in a certain place, so I am going to be using the better part of a 100mm cable. Also, because I'm doing some custom 3D printed parts, I'm actually going to assemble everything apart from the top plate so I can make sure where I can see where the cable routing goes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the flight controller positioned, I'm going to get the standoffs positioned and some of the other custom 3D printed parts so I can just make sure where it all fits. So join me in a moment and I'll get those fitted. Now then, through the magic of editing, we've got a few more bits together. So let's just take you through what's now being done. So we've constructed the arms, we've put the motors on, we've put the bumpers and feet on, we've connected the frame to the base plate, and we've included the cruciform plate. We've now taken the longer screws out of the Mamba stack box and inserted them. Now they come with, I don't know whether you can make that out, but they come with a whole load of gummies and clear nuts and bolts. I've actually held mine in with a couple of black ones because I've got some spares, and I really would recommend to anybody who builds drones, go and buy one of these. They're about £6 or £7 from Amazon. I'm not telling a particular retailer to buy them from, but they're just 3mm standoffs, and they are a godsend when it comes to this. Now, you do get supplied some rather lame nylon bits and bobs in the box. I've crashed before and just sheared off my nylon bits, and I've ended up with a flight controller that's banging around before I've even noticed it. You know, I've gone and flown again and thought, what's it doing? It's tripping out the air, and found that the actual nylon standoffs have broken off, sheared off with the force of the impact. So come over to, on this particular flight controller anyway, come over to rigid steel or stainless steel pins. They're going through gummies, so the chance of actually sort of doing any major damage on impact, well, I think you're going to break a frame rather than break a motor, break a flight controller, but that's what. So what else have we done now? We've got the front bumper in place, and we've got all the standoffs lining through. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just assemble some other bits and bobs on. So here is the mount that I've created. Now, I say I've created. This is actually off Thingiverse, and this is a rework of somebody else's. I will upload these designs to Thingiverse in their own right, but I will have to give credit to various people. I've heavily modified this. It was just a little tray in the first place, but you know, credit where credit's due. Somebody's already created that. So this will go onto there. Now, something that's heavily modified with this as well, you have got, for the sake of argument, you have got screw ports that enable you to screw down. Now, there is a reason here, is the fact that it comes with a little prop guard there that snaps over, if I get it the right way around, snaps over there afterwards and screws into place. And the reason for that is that these on the Air Unit, both the USB port and the SD card port are fully open to get debris and other rubbish detritus lobbing into. So the idea of this is that this actually gives a cover that will cover those. You're not necessarily taking them in and out all the time, and then it's just a couple of screws off to put those in. They actually will just cut into the two holes that I've created there, and yeah, it just makes it a better mount. This also, I've modified this to come with a cable clip just to hold the cable in place once it's in. So that's there ready for our Air Unit. And if we now look at the other part, which is the camera cover and mount, that just simply slots down over. I've pre-assembled it, and that just slots into place. So if we just snap that into place, there we go. Lo and behold, it's looking more and more and more like a quadcopter, even though we still haven't really touched the electronics yet. Now, the whole idea of this was to just see where the electronics can go. So I'm just going to put some gummies down here. Now, the part of doing this is actually working out how much height I've got. I need clearance under, so I'm not touching anything, but I also need clearance over because the battery strap wraps over the top, and I don't want the battery strap rubbing against the flight controller because that will create undue vibration and potentially cause me problems in flight. So currently all I'm really doing here is making sure that let's put two of those on. Let's just, for argument's sake, it might be too much. Let's see when that comes on the stack. When I want, and really and truly all I want is one fixing nut at the top once I've finished all of this, and this is going to take a little bit of hit and miss. So once again, with the magic of editing, join me back when I've got various things in place. Right, so it's now day 2 of the build, because life has a habit of getting in the way, but it doesn't really matter. You know, for the purposes of video editing, I'm sure it'll be a nice seamless stretch. So what's changed? Had a little battle with the flight controller, and the supplied screws with the Mamba stack in question, which are these two types, I just couldn't get either to work. And the reason for that is the fact that the frame, however I tried to work it, wouldn't give me a suitable fixing. So what I actually opted for in the finish is a screw coming up into a nylon sort of threaded unit there, and then found some alternative screws that would actually lock it down. Now, the issue that I actually had with the flight controller, if you look in here, it looks like some sort of shunt resistors in there. To get the gap right, I just couldn't fit any of the screws that came with the pack. They would either concertina that down, or they would basically be too long for the top plate to be fitted. So I've had to make a little bit of an adjustment. Don't like using the nylon, but hey, it's devil and deep blue sea time. Right, okay, so where are we going? So now you'll see that nothing is soldered yet, and we're going to move on to some soldering in a minute. And I'll get this XT60 connected and pre-solder some of the bits for the ESCs. This is actually the one that I previously soldered. If you take a look here where the connections will actually be, I couldn't get a resistor in now, not a resistor, sorry, a capacitor in there effectively. This area is totally taken up by the flight controller, and I just need this area to be free because this is where all my cables will come through. I couldn't really get a capacitor forward because I need my various other gubbins to go in there, and what I've done previously is actually strap it to the arm and get it through, but I just want this to be nice and clean. So in this instance, I've just gone with putting the capacitor onto the XT60 and just doing a little bit of a codge job with some heat shrink just to make that work. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to be just threading in some of the wires to make sure that I've actually got enough space to do what I need to do under the ESC. What I plan to do is actually thread the cables around the back of the ESC and out, so they create a nice little up and over. What that also does do, in the event that you do get an arm break and wrench, it'll put a little bit of tension around the stand up, and maybe even break the wires at the stand up should that be the case, but that would still leave potentially enough cable and not tear the solder pads off in the event of a hard crash. So there's a little bit of logic there. It might be fuzzy logic, but there's a little bit of logic there. So what am I going to do now? Okay, so I'm going to just test first of all the air unit, and then I'm going to get the receiver out just to make sure that I've actually got enough space. Now, a little unboxing video for you. This is how it comes. So if we just pull that out of there, really lovely packaging. Once again, it's a bit like opening an iPhone. You get your 2 antenna in there and you get your air unit in here, so we can just simply lift that out. Now, a little point, a little nudge to DJI. Oh my word. Now, this actually feels, I think they're still plastic, but it does actually feel all of a sudden like this could be silicone wire. If that is the case, then they've listened, because they were supplying these with just plastic wires and they're awful, truly awful. We'll see what happens when I touch a soldering iron to these. I mean, looking at the ends here, they don't look to have melted back, but they are factory dipped, so they'll get very low heat as far as things are concerned. What I'm going to do with that, I just want to make sure that I can run my camera to the front. Now, if I remember right, I can always toggle this around, but it's more about knowing where that will fit. And then also, if we do a little quick unboxing onto the receiver, once again, trying not to take my fingers apart. Here we go. Right there. So that's what comes. Oh, right, it's one of these. Okay, it's not the end of the world, but I do have a possible another antenna. Not been paying attention there when I've ordered that. I do actually like the Immortal T style. These are great, but not exactly what I wanted. So bear with a second. I think I've got a couple of other ones kicking around. And we shall see if they are the same. Have I been a bit thicky twin when I've ordered? So let's try another one. Oh, by the way, if you do get into building quadcopters, you will soon find that you have hordes of electronics sat around waiting to do various bits, whether it be repairs or whether it be... No, that's the same. Ooh, come on. All right, there is one more hope. And I shall come back on that one. So, back in a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. Same. Alright, okay. Here we go. Let's try this. If they're all the same, it's not the end of the world. I'll just have to mount it in a different way to what I've got planned. Which won't hurt really, because in actual fact will make the entire exercise. Yeah, they're all the same. Now, I could have sworn that when I ordered these were the Immortal T style, not the revised antenna. So, somewhere I have got, so bear with me, I'm going to switch off the video and I'm going to come back once I've done a bit of drawer searching. Right then, back from drawer scouring, only to let myself down, and there we go. I did have one of these. Now this is an antenna from an an R9MX. Now, a little story here. The R9MX is being advertised as the replacement for the R9MM. if you run an ASSCT radio and not an access radio, then it's not going to work. So there is a bit of a no. So I actually bought an R9 MX by mistake. Found to my horror that it wouldn't bind to my my old pre-2019 R9 system, and promptly threw it in the bin, but robbed the aerial beforehand. The issue that I've got is that the connection here on this one is nowhere near the micro size connection on there, so it's a bit of a shame, but hey, that gets put in the drawer for another day. So what we got here anyway, so I'm just going to do a little bit of arranging as to how this would go, just to make sure that I've got some space under the ESC. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the gubbins that I prepared earlier. Now this just, all being well, that is spinning, I thought it was. We'll just unscrew out and we'll take that away. Now I'm trying not to damage cables here, but it's making life exceptionally difficult for me. I might need to get a little something in there just to hold that. There we are, that's released. That's released. Now I've never used this stack before, so hence the reason why you know, you have to. And if you are going to be building, there are very few quads out there, very few that are just plug and play. Yes, most of the components are interchangeable. Yes, they all do fit within reason pretty good. But you're still going to be in a situation where you have to learn to make, do and mend. Otherwise, if you're not prepared to do all this messing around, go and buy a pre-built. Go and, you know, just get yourself a plug and play model, because quite simply it's going to drive you nuts. Right, there we go. So we've got that off. So we know that we are going to have our cable running down here, so that's where that's going to sit, and that is going to sit tight against there. That's going to put the air unit into there. That's going to run through and on into there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run this, actually going to tie wrap it to an arm there and there, and then I'm going to run this through to there. So I just need to make sure that with my plan to articulate these cables around the base poles and through, that I will actually have enough space to do the rest of my cabling, and it's not going to interfere too much. I think we're good. I think we're good to go. So yeah, I think I'll get that in. Now there is an oddity as well. Something I can never understand with the air unit. They're not massive, you know. They're somewhere close if we compare the two. I still gripe about why no fixing screws. This would be such a simple task. This has standard mounts here as well for another flight controller. If we just turn this upside down, there we go. Standard fixings there for another flight controller. If these guys actually were producing things a bit like Vista did with the Cadex, yeah, the Vista, fixing screws of some nature, and it would just fit to a standard setting. It's just, but there we go, irritations aside. So this is going to come in through there, so I can within reason probably be able to ferret this under there and shove it through after the fact and get that wired in. So I'm not worried about plugging that in there. The one that will have to be in play when I solder, however, will be that one, because there's no way, unless I take all this apart, and I don't really want to, yeah, that's going to have to be there. So my air unit is going to come into play from day one. So now I know that's going to be the case. I can look to start routing cables and start soldering. So moving on to soldering, let's do a bit of soldering. So quad out the way. Now where possible, in this instance, I'm just going to detach this. Now I'd love to know what we got there. This is one of the things with the Mamba stack, it gives you so much. Yeah, you've got so many other connections. So we've got ground, VCC, so you can actually solder these. So if you do lose this connection, it's actually fully solderable as well. So yeah, it's one of the things I do like about the whole Mamba stack. So D-Shot, right, okay, this is really good news. This is I'd forgotten this is D-Shot 1200. So this means that by just by default I can put bi-directional filtering on this, so that's going to be fun to do. So yeah, that's great. So moving on, what have I got to do to get this into place? So first things first, let's get putting in our connections. Now we've got plus and minus. Now as always, I like to use a little bit of blue tack. It works great for me if I don't move my bench around too much whilst I'm lobbing stuff around. I'm going to move that up onto there and make sure. Now normally, as I've said in a previous video, and I'll put a link to the video below, creating one of these in a really good state is a must for me. I like them to be really nice and clean, but in this instance I would normally have used red and black, and in this instance I wanted both cables to be black. So the trade-off of that is you've got to really pay attention as to your positives and negatives. Now in this instance, the flat side of your XT60 is always going to be the positive, and the negative is on the other side. So when I orientate this, I'm going to be orientating it to the positive side. Now you can see that I've already trimmed back the requirement here for I'll get there in a minute, for the solder. I've done the solder trick where I wick solder down the end of the wires before trimming the wires back, and that just keeps the wires all nice and tidy before we need to use them. So let's just play these into place. Now they're pretty much good to go. Now you can see there that we've got those in, they're snug, it's the right orientation. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to put my glasses back on because I need to be able to see. Hot soldering iron, really hot soldering iron. I can't express to people enough that if you don't use a hot soldering iron, you're going to do more damage than a hot soldering iron does. If you're with me, the simple fact is that it just doesn't do the job quick enough if you've got a cold soldering iron. So my rather disgusting flux. Now this is just some old flux, and I'm going to wipe the board off with some alcohol afterwards, but I like to get a bit of old school flux onto where I'm going to be doing things. As I said, I can take this off after, but in the meantime, let's get this soldered in. Now the issue I've got here, which will probably create no end of drama, is the fact that this might need the heavy duty soldering tip. Yeah, I think it is. It's just sucking the life out of that. It really is. Heat wise, it is absolutely mugging the heat of that for all it's worth. You can see it's only blobbing up, and that's no good. So I'm going to just push this soldering on up a bit. So it's set for 350, but I'm going to take this up to wherever it's going to let me take it and see what kicks. I want a nice hot soldering iron. You can see that we held the soldering iron on for quite a while there, and it just didn't budge. It just, that is probably a full thickness of copper that's in that, taking the power distribution around that ESC. It's just pulling the heat away. You combine that with this heavy duty 12 gauge cable, the heat is just dissipating straight out. So in this instance, I'm going to whack the soldering iron up to somewhere we hope it will give us what we need. We'll try again. Now a little bit more solder, a little bit more flux, and we'll just see if. Now we're bronzing, so that is getting really hot. So let's just try this again. Yeah. Look at that. Do the same again on that one. just clean that off now. It was coming on all right. It's I think it's a little bit heavier than I wanted. Let's just take a little bit of cable on. Be happy with it. Okay, here we go. Let's just put that around the other way up. And what I'm going to do as well is just, I'm not really doing any more with the flux. I'm just going to stick a bit more flux on that. What you find is that it will little peak if you don't have enough flux on. It'll drag to the soldering iron as you pull away, rather than creating a nice little bead. So let's just give that a little bash. That's nice. That's better. I'm happy with that. Okay. Now let that cool, and we'll flick that over and see what the debris is like on the other side. So we've now got, see, this is occupational hazard. You get goo everywhere, up your sleeves, on your arms. Ugh, really is horrible. Just get something to wipe that up with. So I'm just letting that cool. Once again, you can use the silver claw grippy things or whatever. It's just the fact that blue tack works for me great. It does snot up like this at the end of the play, but you know, let's just take that off. I don't want that there anyway, because that's just additional heat coverage. And then let's just clear off all the gubbins that we do. Now there we go, that's a fairly good solder joint. What we wanted. Nice and bright that side, and we're just going to do the same there. So what's this? And remold my blue tack. Put it down again. Now that's put a lot of heat into that. You know, even though we think that it's was only on for a limited amount of time, it does shove a load of heat through. But the heat dissipation through this board is probably huge, for the simple fact that we are in a situation whereby we're going to be dumping a lot of heat through this. So, ow, that's another one. So we can all curse and fume and do what we need to do, and then come back to our lovely and let's do the other side. Now I'm just not getting the feel from this that I want to get. It's really, this will just wipe off afterwards, but let's clean the tip. Now this tip is currently running at around about 445 degrees, so it should. That's a nice one. I don't know why that's being a piggy wiggy. Yeah, it's the earth, that's why. There we go. Right, okay, we're in. I don't think we're going to get much better than that. And if my head's been in the way the whole time, I do apologise. But there we go. So we're now just going to get some alcohol onto a bit of tissue, because I'm going to just clean that up as I go. So that's better. Clean that side off and clean the cables off. And I'm just doing this off camera, which I shouldn't be doing, so there we go. And nice and clean. Now I'm going to drop the drop the soldering iron. I'll get there in a minute. I shall carry on talking whilst I'm trying to think. Seems to be and capable of actually doing both things. So I'll drop that down to around about 350 degrees again. So let's just clean that, all the detritus off that, and make sure. So we can see that there's a nice clear space between both shoulders now, and they're nice and bright and shiny. So we're going to move on to the next bit. So once again, I'm just going to reposition my bit of gubbins. And as I said, I don't think blue tack is designed for soldering, but we go from there. So now what I'm going to do is we're just going to solder the pads on the ESC itself. So first things first, which way's up and which way's down. So that was on the bottom, which is correct. So that was the way around it was, plus on that side. Doesn't matter. That's the motor, and the way you can tell actually, if you look at it, motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4. So that is its orientation. If you are new, I must stop pushing things around. If you are new to building quadcopters, and you're giving it a go, orientation is normally in that. You can remap them if that's not the case. Think outside the box wherever you can. You know, these things are, they're not fixed. There are things of creation. There are things that you make work. If you are buying a plug and play, you know, then fine, you just stick a transmitter on it, or if it comes with a transmitter, then great. But in this instance, just, you know, always think outside the box. Always say, can I do it? Could I do it a different way? And do what works with you. Once you learn how to fly, the sky is the limit. Excuse the pun there. Oh gosh, that just came to mind. So I'm just going to add a little bit of flux. Oh dear me, the jokes get worse. And let's just get this puppy in place. Right, I'd actually forgotten that this was a 32-bit ESC. Oh, just looking forward to this now. So I'm just smearing that. As I said, once again, flux, take it off afterwards, but you can't have too much flux in my opinion. So let's just clean soldering iron tip every time. Let's just apply a bit of solder to there. Lovely. Lovely, and try not to be too slow here, just get it on and get it through. Okay, let's pick it up and turn it around. Okay, and then again, just tinning the pads. All we're doing is tinning the pads. And you want a nice silver finish. Okay, lovely for each and every one of them. So that's pretty much good to go. Now once again, we'll look on the underneath. We're not pulling any detritus with us. Give it a quick wipe. This will do two things. It cools it down as well as gets rid of any additional rubbish that's kicking around. So there we go. Nice, bright, pre-soldered pads. Now that's all we're going to have to do here, because the main plug just plugs in. So I'm not going to worry about these. It's great to have that as a backup. I've got my first ever quad was built around, now a bit of credit here, my first ever quadcopter was built to Stu's at UAV Futures $99 build. Now if you get a chance to visit his page, and I'll put a link to his YouTube site and in actual fact the $99 build that I did, but he's done another one since, but he really does give some great tips. And basically that's still flying, and that's probably 3-4 years old now, and it's flying because I've got the ability to resolder things on. I didn't use exactly the parts that he used. I used something similar, but it's been great for this entire time. So there we go, there's our ESC. It's soldered in. Time to move on to doing the next bit. So let's pop that to one side for now. Let's bring back our quadcopter. Let's give that a quick wipe down. So we're back in the game now. So what are we going to do now? So now what we're going to do is we're going to basically just lay our cables as best as possible. Now to me this is all about aesthetic. So it's all going to be about making this look the business. It's going to be clean and tidy cables. So to do that, you've got to just have a bit of patience, really. So I'm going to wrap those around there like that. Try not to over tension them. The tension will come off them once we've got them into play. So let's just put those ones around there as well. Okay. Come on. That's got that one, and that's popped off already. This is going to be great fun, I can see. There we are. I'm actually going to use a little bit of blue tack because that's getting on my pip. Now I can take this off afterwards, I think. Let's just hold those in place with that. Yeah, all that. See, blue tack has 1,000,001 uses. I'm going to run that through and not really be overly bothered. I just want that to come through the bottom flat. And I know there should be enough fiddle room to push through. Now, should be enough fiddle room, especially out on the receiver as I've taken the antenna off, and that's going to allow me to disconnect this and just poke wire it through. Now, just bear in mind that I haven't programmed this yet. I'm going to be using F-port with this. It's a faster protocol, but also it's a bidirectional protocol. But also these connections don't like more than a couple of 3 mating cycles, and they start to become very loose. So I'm going to re-glue this. I've actually taken the glue off this to look at replacing with the antenna that wouldn't work. So, but in this instance, it's no biggie. So once again, I'm just going to feed this around. I'm trying to keep my sanity in place whilst I do that. That's lovely. Okay, and then we're going to do this one around. To here, and try and get those to play nice again over there. Get there in a minute. As I said, talk amongst yourselves. Let's just, for the sake of sanity, get out of the way. Let's just try and push those in on one side. That's that. Let's try a little bit of ingenuity. Because once they're in and under, they'll lock themselves in. But until they're in and under, they'll be like, it's like herding cats. Come on. So she's going to come around there. Come on. Oops, if I can plait it right. Oh, come on. So we may come back to this after much of a to-do. It's gotcha. Right. They're in. Right, the first thing I'm going to do, I've got to move this air unit out of the way. Now this is where it starts to become a bit of a threading session. You know, you kind of have to thread one thing into the next thing, into the next thing. Now that will sit in on there like so. So that thread's going to have to go to the side. And that gets me into where I need to be there. Now for temporary purposes, I'm just going to put a couple of plastic, in this instance, screws just to hold it in place. Solely because I'm not going to stick the upper cover on yet. So grab myself a little Phillips. That's it. I just need to hold it steady in place for now. Absolutely, the screwdriver that fits. Here we are. Yeah, it's got it. Right, you monkey. Hopefully that should pull away, leaving no residue. Yeah, I will actually put another screw on there as well, because that's a bit rubbish. I want that to be just held in place. I just don't want things scuppered by things floating around at this stage. Come on. Let's go that one. And that's got that. So okay, so I'm going to now double the bits of blue tack up now. So okay, so where are we? We've got our leads, they're going through nicely, and now what I plan to do is just bring them over the top and cut them into place. So this is the bit that makes you sweat. You get this wrong now and it starts to get you really grumpy. Right, so I need to find some snips. Here we go. So that's cable number 1. So I'm going to go away and I'm going to do this bit off camera and then pick it up when I've soldered these on, or in the last few solders, just so as I can not keep you hanging on for hours. Right then, cracking on with the soldering. I've done most of the ESC, but I'll just show you what I've done. So I've tucked the cables in and under the ESC and around and back up, and this just creates a nice tidy finish. I've done one side. I'm going to clean it all off with alcohol in a moment, but let's just do the final 3 and I'll show you what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the cable, wrapping it over the top, giving it a little bit of slack, finding the point where it is and nipping it off there. Then just strip with your fingernail a little bit off, roll that through if you can. He says easier said than done. A little bit of solder. Now, one of the reasons I got the ESC away is the flight controller away as well, is the fact that you don't want any drips of solder getting on that. So clean your soldering on a regular basis. Right, and what we're going to do is bring that over the top. That's a little bit of a pinch and work away from yourself. There we go, perfect. Let it cool. And the next one. So let's just take that up and over. So up, over, giving roughly the same amount as before. Nip it off. Pinch back, more on that. Lovely. Let's just take the soldering on. Oh, that's a bit manky. Okay, and once again, it's fine. Now it's great to use these. Gentle pressure down. Perfect. And the final one. Okay. So once again, it's just a loop over, a little bit of tension on, find out where the loop naturally wants to sit, which is there. Flip it back. Pinch away some of the detail, solder it up. I'm just a little bit, and once again pick it up with the tweezers over the top. There we go. There we go. And then just tidy that down. There is our ESC all wired, and that's really all we've got to do in this instance. It's not a particularly complex wiring job. If you're doing individual arm DSCs, then it can be a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do here is just, I've used lots and lots and lots of flux. Now flux can be conductive, so just make sure, if you do get any cables there like which were shrinking away, just rub them up, rub them back up, because they're all silicon rubber, so they'll just come back up onto play. That's that. It's just a bit of alcohol in there just to clean off all the residual gubbins that we've got in there. I use quite a lot, and yeah, we'll clean that up and we'll be back to look at the next bit shortly. So we are back on the bench again, and just tidying up a few bits and bobs. We've cleaned down what we needed to do in relation to the soldering that we've done. I'm just having a little clean on the desk to get rid of any debris. I like to use a brush, and the reason for that is if you sometimes wipe it into your hands, you can get solder and sharp objects, etc. bite you. I don't like that, so yeah, brush just occasionally, just to get rid of anything, give you a clear space again. Means that you don't end up with swarf and stuff in your hands. Right, okay, so where are we? So we're now in a situation, we've got a nice tidy wires there wrapping around and underneath and back on themselves. That just creates a nice general finish to the ESC. We've got nice bright solder joints, so they're all good. They've had a good clean and a good wipe. So now we're in a position to assemble our flight stack. So we've got it all ready. We've worked out what it needs to be. We've thought about it, we've slept over it, we've struggled, and now we're in a situation to hopefully assemble it and it'll go right. So what we're going to do here is, there's our flight stack with our right size screws on. Let's just now come in here, and without trying to disturb too much, get out of the way, pop that back in there. If I can find the hole. Come on. I think, there we go. That's in and on and at it. Right. So we're all sitting level and good. So let's just offer that up. And that's not the one. Or is it? Yes, it is. Let's just put these lights back on. There we go. That might help people see a little better. Just make sure from previous that the bottom ones are fully tightened, which it is, and that one, which it is, and that will mean that the flight stack should all compress down equally to the same pressure. That's a bit loose. There we go. So, and there we go. They'll actually bottom out, which I'm wanting them to do. That should hopefully create, there we go. So that shunt capacitor that's in there now is definitely sitting away from the circuit board, and I can get clear air through. Right, so there we go. So next things to play at is how we mount this little puppy in. Now this has got to go under, and I might do it through it. Let's just have a try. Let's just open that up. Get in there. Push it. So that's going to sit in there. That's going to sit down. That's going to sit down onto there. Look at that. It's almost made for the job. So that's giving me now what I need to do. But what I have got to do is get another cable under all these gubbins and up into there. So let's just have a look at that now. So we have got the cable that goes there. That clicks in. Now it's quite a positive click, and it does feel more like silicon. It doesn't, not sure, still not convinced it's not silicon wire, but let's just get this into play. That's going to fit in there. Now, what this does two things, first and foremost. This back bracket, should I explain? This back bracket holds both the antennas in place so they don't get dislodged, keeps the XC60 nicely presented, and this tray then allows for the soldering. So talk amongst yourselves whilst I just wire this track under. Now we're not going to use all these cables because we're not actually using the flight control unit as it's ultimately intended to be. So that's going to slot in there. Okay, a couple of days have passed, but now back to the bench again. Life does get in the way occasionally. So done next to nothing on the build, except for I threaded through under the flight controller my R9mm, and I've flashed it, and I've basically just added some wires to it. What I have also done is made a little cradle that should allow it to slot onto the arm, and for the cable to slot into that, and then that'll be clamped in place there with a tie wrap, and that should hold it nice and tight, and I can tuck the cables out of the way. So you're not really missed a lot apart from a few 3D printing designs. I'll put these along with the other stuff up onto my Tinkercad page, and you can have access to that. So let's have a think about what we are doing in relation to wiring now, because we're getting to that stage. We've got to start to make sure that everything's going to fit. What I've actually done as well is I've printed off the flight controller, and I've just added my connections just so as a quick reference guide for me. I take a look at this, and basically I just know what I'm doing. So what I'm going to be doing in this instance, if I orientate it the same as the flight controller, I'm going to be running the cable to the DJI Air Unit under it and to the left as we look at it, and I'm going to have white and grey coming to TX and RX, which is just over here, and then I'm going to be picking up the 9-volt rail at the front of the flight controller. I've got my buzzer here as well, which will connect to the front of the flight controller, and then I've got my R9, which will come up and underneath and will actually connect to the 5-volt pad here, the ground here, and the TX3, which is here. Also, the other side of doing this is that when I come to program beta flight, I'll try that again, beta flight, I will know where the various connections are and the various RX connections that I need to be activating within Betaflight. So yeah, go from there really. So let's crack on. Let's do a little bit more work. Now, one of the things I'm going to do whilst it's here is I'm going to strap that down with a tie wrap. So let's just rummage around in one of my tie wrap bags and look to get this in there. As you probably discovered, this I'm making quite a fussy work of this, but this is because I want this to look absolutely amazing when it's built. Now, you can build quadcopters a hell of a lot quicker, but for me it's this one is really coming down to I want it to look tidy as well as be practical. So I'm just going to wrench that down. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to push a little bit of slack into that. Now, the reason for that is the fact that I just want, when it springs back, I want the pressure to be just as it needs to be, nothing more and nothing less. Now, that's great. Now, that's going to hold that down and give me, by the look of it, what I need. So tension that up, pair of snips, just get in there with this. Now, the other thing that this will do, this will basically be producing holding pen. So in the event that I have a hard crash and it pulls the battery, it should be able to release the or if it's going to tear anything, it's going to break into that and not potentially rip out the back of my air unit. Now that is quite tight, but the air unit is going to go and fit down nicely on top of that. So now the air unit, the electrics for the air unit, and we're going to not be using one of these cables. We're only going to be using white, grey, and we're going to use a plus and minus. So these two here at the bottom are going to be just cut off. Basically, I'm going to cut them off. I'm not going to lose them, because in the future I may decide to buy a DJI controller, and these are your S-Bus controls for the DJI. So in this instance I'm just going to be using grey, white, red and black. But for now, let's just find our length. And we're going to slot that in, and we're going to just pop it underneath for now to get an approximation of length. And that's pretty much where I'll be needing the maximum length to go on the cables. I've got it tucked under there. Yep. So here we go, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm just going to give it a little bit of slack because I do need it to be usable. I'm going to cut that off there. There we go, done. Okay, so first things first, so that's going to be the length of the power. So the power is the red and black. So let's just peel off and try, where possible, to peel them off together. Okay, so that brings us down to there. So that brings our power up the front, and then we have got, according to our white and grey. So let's just peel off the other two for now. Which it's done. It's a little bit fiddly, but that's how it goes. So that's going to be coming up underneath. Now I'm going to solder these from the underside, so I'm going to take that there. Okay, and I'm leaving just a little bit of slack on. Now this one, I'll show you what I'll do with this. I'll cut it to the same length or similar length, cut it off. Now all I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a bit of tie wrap onto them, a bit of heat shrink onto it, and just heat shrink it out of the way. That way it's going to be nice and tidy, and it's not going to get under anybody's feet. So whilst I'm trying to find my heat shrink again, you don't run off with my heat shrink. If you build these models, any kind of heat shrink you keep. I usually have bundles of the stuff kicking around, and in this instance I just want one, so I can go over there. Let's put my heat gun on. That will slot over quite nicely. Just nip that off. All I'm doing here is just bending it over. About. Okay. Okie dokie, right, so that's done. That will shut off in a second. Now I'm just going to unplug this, and we're going to move that out of the way, and I'm going to get my trusty soldering station in. Oh, just as a tip, if you need to do a little bit of work with a glue stick, sometimes the heat gun, or shall I say the glue gun, is a little bit too heavy-handed and a bit too messy. Just get a heat gun on the tip of one of these. You can see what I've done there. It melts a little bit and just dab it on. And if you take a look inside there, I've done exactly that with the antenna, and it just means that you can get pretty precise and accurate soldering glue gun action going on. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing now is I'm just charging up my soldering iron ready. We're going to just strip these back now, only a little bit, and we're going to tin the cables. So let's just get into, there we go, so that's just come apart. Now these are plastic wires, so it's a crying shame. DJI, I will get that. For some reason I pronounce it with a D, with a G. I get there. God, truth, teeth really are not working. I don't know why they would not consider silicone. Nobody uses plastic in their right mind. It melts under the slightest bit of heat from a heat gun. Okay, so we're going to just knit these back. So it does help to have reasonably good nails when you're doing this. Okay, we're just going to tie off that. I'm happy with that. So now let's just get it onto our bit of blue tack. Holds it great. Clean our solder tip, grab some solder, and there we go, 1, 2, and 1, 2. That's it, job done. Right, okay. So the other thing that I'm contemplating doing is actually making this a little bit more of a tube to try and slide it over. How long would that need to be? I think yeah, I just want a couple of twists, I think. I don't want to make it too busy. So next thing I'm going to do, flight controller off now. We're going to disconnect the flight controller. Okay, now let's just get in there and undo the nuts again. Now the great thing with these cabled flight controllers is the fact that they do just disconnect. It's as simple as that, and drop away. There we go. So there's our flight controller. Now what we're going to do here is we are going to, for a neat job, I'm coming up from the underside. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at our plan again, and we can see that we've got third and fourth in. So we're looking at this one now. Third and fourth in across here before we meet these is 9 volt and ground. So this is where I plan to put these two little puppies. So if we take a look here, I'm moving steadily further away from the camera, so I do appreciate that this might be a little difficult, but it is fiddly without being able to see. I'm just going to push those up. Come on. From the underside. That's one. Come on. Now you don't have to do this. I'm doing this because I'm very, very particular about how I want the build to look when it's done. But you do not have to do this. Okay, bear with me and keep talking amongst yourselves whilst I do this. Ground. The trouble is you end up pegging them in the things in the wrong hole, and oh, they're determined to keep pinging out. There we go, we got it. Yep, we've got it. Okay. So just to make sure, yeah, that's it. So I'm just going to pop that onto my makeshift soldering station. I'm going to just arrange the cables lightly how I want them, just so as they're sticking through a little bit better. I've got them pinched on the blue tack below, and literally what we're going to do is we're just going to solder that in. That's it. Okay, that looks good to me. And now, so looking at that, a nice clean solder joint. Now, make sure that's in. I'm just going to trim the top off where I can see it. Yep, that's working. Okay, so the next one is we're going to just do a twisty-roo of the cables back here, so we can see 9 volt and ground, and that's going to come up into TX4, so the white is going to go into TX4, so it's 1 in and 2 in. So there. I'm going to do this individually because it's a real faff otherwise. Okay. And again. That's one. Let's get your head out of the way. And now I'm going to actually use the tweezers now because it's getting a bit fiddly. There we are. Perfect. So I should have white and grey, according to my wiring diagram, in the right place. Okay. So there we go. So those are now connected. So I've now got, and I'm going to clean this off as well. So we've now got our two main power line in, and we've got our connector for our DJI Air Unit in. Now we're going to be looking, this could be fun, at getting our, the reason I've left it all disconnected is that I want a bit of space to get things moving as I need them to be. So this time round we're going to come over underneath and up into that. Now that's going to be going down in there somewhere, so I really need to make sure I've just got a little bit of extra play on the cables this time. And once again, pick them off with your finger, bind them over, onto the blue tack to hold them steady, and then just tin them off. That's it. Now these ones are coming up and under, so we have got, according to our diagram, 5 volt ground. So 5 volt is the square one, so let's start with the 5 volt rail, make it easy for ourselves. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Just add a little bit of a curl in the cable. So our 5 volt first of all, in there. Once again, just going to pin it into place. Clean the soldering iron. Oh, don't like this, got a bit of shake going on. That's it, that's on. And that's how quick it can be in relation to going in. Now let's, tweezers are your friends unless they're sharp tweezers and they hurt, and then we call them names. So once again, get that into place, hold it in, hot soldering iron. There we are. And then we are looking to get our TX pad in play. So let's just give that a little wrap. And that's going to come in under that. Gosh, not enough hands or fingers. You do need to have a little bit of patience if you're going to be under soldering it. Now this is TX3, there's a second one in. That should give us what we need there. So if we just take a look, pad. So yeah, TX3. There we go. So that one's in. So what have we got left to do? So we've got our whites, our greys, and our grounds. Looks like we've done all the wiring that we need to do. Now, can you see how simple and effective quadcopters are these days? You've got connectors for the flight controllers. You've got, oh, I nearly forgot. I've got to do the buzzer. Here we go. Right, okay. Now I know that this doesn't require a lot because the buzzer is actually around there. But I'm just going to sort of work out a comfortable length of cable so I could potentially plug it in, plug it out, or shuffle it a little bit that I need to do. So I nearly ran off without doing the buzzer then. Now once again, we're in the back end of pinch, pinch, and then let's just bring that over a little bit, drop that off. Once again, tin the cables. That's it. And there we go. Now, the nice thing about this is that because it's just two cables in this instance, buzzer plus, buzzer minus, so it's plus through there. Come on, little thing. Tell you what, I've got a pip on the end of that. Let's just take that off. So, get my orientation right again. There it is. Can't see if it's looking. It says it on the bottom. Buzzer plus, buzzer minus. So buzzer plus. Once again, the blue tack just holds it enough for me to come along. Tell us all. There we go in there. Okay. Clean that is. There we are. Okay, so our spaghetti wiring is done, and let's start assembling it. Let's have a little tidy up and join me in a second. So we've got our components soldered now. We know roughly where things are going, so we've just got to have a little battle now with wills. Or it's a battle of wills, not with wills, to get everything back in to where you want it to be and sitting nicely now. Now you can see that everything was good, and that's going that way around. So let's just hop that up. I'm going to turn it and just make sure, yeah, the cables aren't being pinched in any way, shape or form. That's out of the way. That's got clearance through. So let's go with a little tighten up on the flight controller. Some flexibility there. Let's make sure that that's not pinched in any way. As we go down on that one. And down on that one. And finally down on that one. So we should now be in a situation where things are pinched tight to how they need to be. So yeah, let's put that back into where it's going. And that buzzer is, that's not the buzzer, that's the buzzer, that needs to come inside. And now let's just route our cabling to the back of this little puppy. Make sure we've got it as we want it, so it clips back in. Now what I'm going to do here is just make sure that I'm routing the cable well out of the way, but not in the same respect, not pinching it as I'm putting it in. So we can see the cable in there. Can't be sat on top of the cables, but it mustn't be pinched in the seat in the same respect. So that's looking better. There we go. Right, we got it. Now then, there is a little bit of rock, but that will come out because the top plate will pinch on top of that. Just got to make sure that those cables are not being pinched accordingly in the same respect. They look like they're free. Okay. So that's that. So let's put the side plates on too. So this is where it's going to start looking something like. So a few bits out of the way. And just slot down. Come on, give it here. And this one in turn. Come on, camera, out of the way. There we go. And you can see all these components fit perfectly because they've all been based off the actual real standoffs that I made. If you saw the previous video, you'd see a way of scanning these items in. It fits perfectly because it was scanned in. It's as simple as that. So now I'm just going to pull that back a bit, and I know where that's going to be sat, and I'm going to turn it over in fairness because I want the bind button to be up, but I'm not going to secure it yet until I know where the camera is fitting. So let's get this camera installed. Well, that runs away. Come on, you sit over there. Now I'm taking it that there's a little arrow on it that points up, and I'm taking it that that is up, not down. If they put top on, it might help. Up. We'll take it that it's the arrow, it's the direction of forward. So here we go. Now this quite simply slots over at the back, drops in. Now this isn't my design. Once again, I've nobbled somebody's design off Tinkercad, and my Tinkercad page will give credit to them when I now I did actually heavily amend this. This was a much bulkier block to start with, and this has been amended to suit this design. So like with anything else, I usually don't just take somebody's design and use it ad hoc. I'd actually change it and make it work to how. So same here, a number of changes have been done heavily to this rear block to make it work for how I wanted it to be for the part in question there. Let's just push that in there. There we go. That's that. Got one more screw. There we go. It's actually starting to look a little bit like a quadcopter. Right. So that's in. So that now, if we just move our receiver out of the way, it's going to slot in there. It will, I promise you. There we go, that's going to slot in there. Now, the issue that we've got here is you've never got enough space in the back of here, and it always takes a lot of working around because we're trying to get just so many gubbins in. Now I'm going to pull my receiver out for now, push this in, try not to destroy it in any way. And it will actually go down until it's in to the location that I want it to be. That I think is that. That's it. So I've got a couple of screws kicking around somewhere, he says. Now I'm going to amend some of these screws, but for now these are just to get them in and on and working how I want them to be. And yeah, that's the one I've preordained. Great. Now, you can see that I'm really going to struggle to get that anywhere other than where it wants to sit. Now, I might just let it flop around there aimlessly in the short term, or I put it down on a pad. Let's just have a quick look here. Get that out of the way. Yeah, I'm going to put a pad in. So, a little bit of double-sided tape. Now you're thinking to yourself, what a lot of faffing around to build a quadcopter. Go and buy one. Well, yeah, if you think it's a load of faffing around, do go and buy one. But get a bind and fly and save yourself all the aggro. If, on the other hand, you like the fact that it's yours, it's a creation of yours, and it's, you know, I wouldn't say 100% yours, but you put your heart and soul into getting it to flight status, then build it, because you'll get so much fulfillment from it. It really is an amazing opportunity to build some great flying machines. Now let me just that's the ones I want. As ever, it's a little bit of jiggery pokery just to get in that. You're going to say to yourself, why have you done that? Why do you make life easy for yourself? Well, I wanted it to be out of the way. I'm going to put a cable tie around it just to hold it in place, but that's going to work fine for me. Now what we do here, we'll get the cable tie in a little bit. I'll just make sure everything works before I strap everything down too much. And that little buzzer pop is going to go, he says. Into there. Now, yeah, look at that. 3D printed to the right size in the first place. Now there's a tiny little hole here, so the buzzer should work. Now, as I said, when I went away for a couple of days, I created some little standoffs for the antenna, because this wasn't, if you watch the video closely, I do grumble about the fact that I've ordered the wrong type of antenna. Now it's not a problem, it's not going to stop the build, and it's not going to really interfere with much as I'm aware of. I mean, the R9 is the R9 is the R9, but it's just the fact that I wanted the more rigid antenna. But that being said, I've now got, pulling on that a little bit, there we go, this to be here. Now that will sit underneath, so that will click onto there like so. That fits into there like so. Now what I actually did, just to show you, I nipped, I put a heat shrink in, but I put a nick in the heat shrink and fed the cable through the nick in the heat shrink first, just so as it pulled it back in on itself and gave it the ability to sit in this little cradle that I've made for it. Aren't we kind? Aren't we lovely? Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now that's going to go forward a little bit until I'm happy. That's roughly where it needs to be. You shouldn't get a lot of noise. Look at that. Yeah, it's really quite nice. Trying not to put trying not to put too much tension on it, but I'm going to go with it there. I've also put a little locking stud into it, so hopefully, he says, if I get it around the right way, that should slot on there. Now, holding it and trying to do everything else at the same time. Get a tie wrap. not enough hands. Okay, let's just tie that to start with. I'll try and bring it back under the camera because I know that I'm wandering closer and closer to me because I'm getting short-sighted in my old age. Okay, pop that on there. And we're in a position to start. Look at that. See, this is where having your own 3D printer pays dividends. Try not to snip the aerial, and nice and clean and tidy. There's our aerial. It's in, it's not going anywhere. I'll probably just tie wrap that down. Now I've done it that side. Yeah, it's not interfering, it's not sitting on any motors, it's below the motor wires. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. That's gone really, really well. Also won't get caught in the props. Yeah, I'm happy. Happy, happy, happy. So, moving on. We've got our canopy in there. We're doing all the things we know. This is where we can now lie down that cable and just make sure everything now just fits where it should do. Let's just move that out of the way. We can come around here and we can see that cable. Make sure it's not being pinched. Once again, get the tweezers in if you need to. Yeah. Bingo. Right. That's good. Good. Yeah, right. So there we have, hopefully, our electronics in place. Now the next thing we've got to do is get our top plate in. Now our top plate is going to sit on here, but the issue that we've got, and we've not put one yet, and this is kind of, you've got to do it before you put the air unit in, which I'm not doing yet. Let's pull these out, is get your DJI antennas in. Come on, give me them. They do. As I said, it's like unwrapping an Apple phone. I mean, you might have seen in the previous video that I've unwrapped a cheap air unit thing. That's right. No, cheap air unit, a flight controller. You know. Oh God, you just want to get into the packaging. There we are. Hey. So we've now got our packaging. So what have we got in place? So what we have to do here is these just slot in and clip in. Get there in a minute. They do take a bit of force. There we go. They click in and snap in. Now I've designed this back plate here. If you look, that it actually holds those in place because they pop out without a second thought. They really are a bit yampy as far as that's concerned. So what I've then got is this top plate. Now this top plate will sit on top. Now the issue that you've got is that this existing top plate will foul. So we have to do a little bit of cleaning up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to notch out this top plate and I'll be back shortly. Once that's notched out, we'll go from there. So with a bit of filing, we've made the amendments. Now all I've done is taken a file depth in either side and taken a file depth down on this particular one, and it enables it just to slot around the aerials as they come up. Now if you are doing any kind of carbon fibre work, do it in a bucket of water. Make sure you don't breathe it in, wear a mask, all the usual things, because it's pretty nasty stuff. So we are moving on to the next bit. So what are we going to do here? So I've got this top plate here. Now this top plate serves two purposes. This holds the antennas out of the way, but it also allows for a little tie wrap to go in and create some compression on the underside. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, now make sure you come down from the top in. Okay, make sure you come down from the top. And the reason for that is that you just want the thickness of the tie wrap sticking through at the bottom to create compression onto the case as you assemble it, and that will just hold the air unit nice and tight. As I said, I'm a bit boggled by DJI in relation to the fact that it's an afterthought to have put some mounting holes in it. You know, it's just, everybody uses mounting holes. This has got a mounting hole. Could have just been screwed to the 25 by 25 mount or whatever it is, and then so that's going to pop into there. We can see here that that just takes a little bit of bending out of the way. So we're just going to pop that out of the way into there, pop it out of the way into there, and that should, if the plan goes to plan, allow it to pop down. So bear with me whilst I just argue with the antennas for a second. And this all just pops together, or will do in a moment. Once. So now it should just pop down and clip over these. He says, pushing forcefully. There we are. That's in and on. So let's get some screws in. So I'll tell you what we're going to do before I get too carried away. Ugh. A little bit more glue. Just glue the screws in. It's too easy to forget, and then you end up with flying away and bits dropping off your quad all over the field. You don't want to do that. On 2 counts, it makes for bad quads, but should animals, horses and the like, or cattle be in the field, you don't want them picking up any bits of quadcopter. If you do go flying with a quad, also be considerate. If your brake pops, if you crash, pick up your bits and litter. It makes for a good connection with the farming people if you look after the land that you fly on. So we'll just get these tagged in. And it's starting to look something like. Oh, come on. Let me pop that one in there. And now the final couple of screws. Now these will tension down the top plate, all being well, without breaking anything. So what we'll do is we get into there. Broke it. Knew I was going to do that. Just had a feeling. So I'm going to remake that top plate. So catch you back in a minute. So back to it again. Reprinted another 3D printed part, and this time we're going to take our top plate. I'm just going to be a little bit more delicate with it this time. I was getting a bit heavy-handed previous, and we'll start with that side. So let's just get ourselves. Unfortunately, the washing machine's decided to kick in whilst I'm doing this one, so it clearly wants to be in on the video, as happens. So we're just going to remount this on here. So I do apologise that the washing machine is going round and round and round. Not a lot I can do about it. So let's get that in there. Oh, God, it feels a little bit junky. Try it again. Through there. Let's just... That's great. Okay, we're going to just nip that off. Let's see if we can mount this puppy on this time. So this time around, what I'm going to do is just get the antennas out of the way and actually get it fitted where I want to have it fitted. Come on. It was a little bit tricky. It's a bit of a funny design, this, but it's what it is, right then. So we are on. Can we get in? That's the question. That's better. Come on. Here we go. Just a little bit awkward to get into. Wow. Cracking again. Yeah. I'll put a bit of CA here. Right, there we go. So that one's in. So return back to my other ones. Let's just put a little bit of blue on there. And we'll screw this top plate on. Last few screws. Now I'll tell you what I've got to do as well on this. That's good. And then if we see there, that's all nice down tight. It did have a little crack, and I'm just going to put a bit of CA glue on that one for argument's sake. And now there's a couple of final things left to do without putting undue stress onto the, and that is we're going to just put the side screws in. So bear with me a second whilst I just fight the fact that I don't have 4 pairs of hands. Come on, little devil. Come on. Oh, I'll tell you what. It's really wanting to play up. Now, however I try and do it, because I've done these big feet on this, it doesn't seem to want to play, or at least doesn't want to play nicely. There we go. So I'm just getting the keyway set out. See if this will do. let me screw that in from the side. No, he doesn't want to let me. So there we have it. After a lot of cursing and having to find a few other tools and basically forgetting to switch the camera back on, I managed to get that in, but it just screws in. It's an all thread. One of the final things we've got to do on the build part of things for now is basically just put ourselves a foam top in. Now this is just some foam I've got kicking around. I'm going to put some double-sided tape on this now. What we have to be aware of is these. So I probably won't do it this side of the build, but I'll show it you when I've completed it. I need to find something I can just cut out those with and make a nice job of that. But all told, that is the build. So here we go. Nice clean stack. And if I just get the one of the straps that we had before and we feed that through, you'll see there's nice clearance. Now, having no cables on top means that it's really easy to thread my battery strap through and it's not catching on anything, no, at least not pulling on any cables. And then that takes us through there. So see what it looks like with a battery on. Ooh, everything's falling down. This is one of my tattoo batteries that I will be using for this build. I'm not going to strap it on fully in this instance, but that would pop onto there, onto there, and yeah, that's something looking something like a quadcopter. So yeah, thanks for watching. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it gave you a flavour about how to build quadcopters. Next video will be me plugging this baby in, hopefully no blue smoke, getting it into beta flight, getting it programmed up and getting it into the air. So I hope you join me in the next one. I hope you've enjoyed it. So stay safe and happy flying.